cut it and stuff. Um, okay, so it's
Dude.
recording, and I
Oh,
just wanted to
great.
say that I will probably have to leave like before 2 hours because I
Sure.
have some work I would need to finish to send
I
tonight.
should as well. Yeah. I
So
uh I want to buy things now that I have money. I
uh,
need like I want to buy like another pillow and like a better towel and basic things like, like
nice.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I love having money for that kind of thing. Like it's suddenly like it's like The Sims or something. Like you
Yes,
just
it's so weird. I am thinking about it in video game terminology a lot.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So
Awesome.
funny. Okay.
Okay. Yes. I don't know
Well, I feel
what's
like there's
going on.
so many things we could talk about as
Mm,
usual. um,
yeah.
I wanted to ask if maybe we could um, lead with this conversation about the awakened and the unawakened as a
Okay.
weird, tidy binary that uh, people
Yes.
often make reference to in spiritual communities and so on.
Mm,
And you put up actually a series of videos that all kind of seem on this trajectory in different ways. Um, but one in particular, and I'm wondering if you could, at whatever granularity you would like to, like sort of summarize slightly your thoughts about it, because they were just very good, I thought.
ah. Thanks. I mean, let's see. I'm like I think I wonder why I'm what is it about this topic? Uh, basically, yeah, it seems like there's just a way in which when you see something that other people are not seeing,
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know, like because that inevitably I think will create the feeling that that you've seen past the veil, or that you're
Right. Right.
enlightened, or that you're awakened, and I mean I definitely have that feeling. I sympathize
Well,
with it.
actually,
Yeah.
it doesn't. It kind of first of all, it kind of you have the opposite reaction, or at least I
Ah,
did. Like,
yes.
I thought I'm insane. I've lost my mind, and there's not. That was my initial go-to with it. Only later did I start to develop a rather inflationary attitude about it. That,
Right.
that
Right, right, right.
actually, I'm a magical seer and all of this. At first, it was much more just sinister. Yeah.
Mm. You're right. That's a good point, actually, because I've been thinking about this a lot. The role of this kind of, I don't know what you would call it. Like you said, this sort of giving yourself a lot of importance,
Mm.
giving your life a lot of importance. I think there's I like exactly. It can have this sort of like inflationary aspect to it, and at the
Yes.
same time, we've spoken about this as well, that it's like the way out of that um misery or whatever is to somehow love yourself a little more, or something
Mm.
like that. And that it's almost as if after years and years of not loving ourselves, the pendulum kind of swings to the other side, and
Yeah.
and
Right.
we love ourselves like a lot, and it sort of makes you see how important your art is, and how important your quest
Yes.
is, and the vision that you're having. um and I'm getting lost now trying to sort of play
Yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
referee. Like I'm trying to sort of see the good side of
Yes,
all of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um, so maybe just I'll try to focus
Well,
on.
well, you were coming down, I think, on a slight position by the end of it. You were saying
Yeah.
um, that really this this division between enlightened and unenlightened, or awakened or not awakened, is a kind of an illusion, because it
Mm,
it doesn't take into account simul the simultaneity of parallel truths,
Mm.
basically. People are awake, like I think you were saying, right? People are awakened to different things. There's no like unitary thing to be aware of. People are aware of all sorts of different things and categories of things, and aware of them in different ways. And it's not always clear who has the correct awareness. Obviously, that's the whole problem of getting along with other people and with reality. Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange because exactly on the one hand I
And
see
I'm
this
playing referee now because I actually think I disagree with that. But
right.
yeah.
Well, I was just wondering. It's funny because right now I also feel like
Right.
disagreeing with certain parts of that, even though I said them. Just
Sure. Yeah.
because
I disagree with most things I say on camera. Just by the way, everyone, it's always too one-dimensional.
yeah, exactly. That's the weird thing, that every time after making a video or any kind of statement, there's always this feeling of, okay, now that I've made it, I'm starting to see the ways in which
Yeah, exactly.
I want to go in the other direction. But yeah, like exactly. On the one hand, I have this feeling that you can be sort of aware, for example, of astrology, let's say, and and I've had conversations with friends where they've said to me that, that if if I say that I'm aware of this huge, enormous, like cosmic system that affects everyone, and other people are not, then somehow that I'm putting myself in this sort of strange position of
Yeah.
power or whatever.
We're in the know, and you guys
Right, we're in the
don't know.
know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um and yet to argue the point that I was making in the video, before disagreeing with myself for a second, is just that yeah, I can see that well, what I would respond to that kind of comment about astrology is that someone can like be an academic of the stars or whatever, that can focus a lot of time on stars and suddenly find a lot of patterns in them that are of significance. Or you can be an academic of movies and synchromysticism and find a lot of real patterns there. And in the same way, again, a geologist can find incredible stuff about rock formations that I'm not awakened to. That depending
Right.
on what you study, you can become awakened about one thing or the other.
Yes.
However, at the same time, it does feel that when you're having intense synchronicity experiences, it does seem as if there is something about it that is very overarching, or that is
well, right. Actually, what I want to suggest is that self-awareness might constitute a special category. I'm not sure, but it seems to describe itself as a special category. Like my big challenge would be is like, okay, if that's the case, then why is there this persistent image of linear awareness increase in the unconscious? The caduceus seems to represent that so strongly. It's reaching progressive stages of awareness or something as it intertwines with its opposite in inverting at each stage. And it's like, the two minds becoming more and more aware of each other as they climb levels of awareness. And this idea of levels of perception seems so baked into so many representations of inner cosmologies, heavens and hells and things like this. And then, of course, the mythic structures are so directed also in the direction of things like the Holy Grail and the stone and all of this. So I think we have to account somehow for the the presence of that material, apparently unconscious material, which does seem to imply some kind of a linear quest where everyone ends up at the same destination, though. It's a quest to the middle. Everyone's trying to get into the center.
Yeah.
Which kind of means once we all get to the center, maybe then it stops. I guess maybe the way that I wiggle out of this conceptually or something is that I'm like, we are going to combine into a single giant perspective, which is going to be paradoxically a kind of sum of all of our small perspectives, and that when that happens, then it's, in other words, I guess because I believe that we all have the potential to achieve 100% perfect self-awareness. It's not actually a value judgment. It's just a judgment of where people are on a board, on a map. Like, I guess I kind of do lean in the direction of reincarnation when I think along those lines, which I think you touch on in your video a bit as well, or at least in an adjacent video. There was some discussion about reincarnation. So anyway, I don't know. Those weren't very organized thoughts. But yeah.
No, but yeah, I agree that there is exactly, that's the thing that I also feel whenever I make videos about this stuff, that there is a part of me that is simply, I think, making arguments out of shame or embarrassment or something like that.
Me too. Yeah, I noticed that about myself quite a bit. Yeah.
I noticed that there's a part of me that's like trying to downplay some of the stuff.
Isn't that a weird impulse?
Exactly. Because of I suppose, because of a fear of it getting,
because it's always beyond language, and so you run the risk, I think, of like flooding your audience with constant maximum language, it loses all meaning. It's like when you read certain styles of like religious poetry and stuff, it's just like listing the attributes of God, it's just like, it's the shiniest, brightest, most glorious, most this, that, like million names, like, it's like, I don't know, it just becomes like, so I think I have a feeling about that. It's just like, if I'm not actively trying to suppress my like bigness about it, every single statement I make about it is going to have that weight. And that's when people think you're truly nuts, when you're like, look at this letter, like this, and you're like freaking out about this like little component with this huge emotion. And I feel in danger of doing that all the time, because that's how I actually relate to it. But it's just like crafting. Actually, weirdly, we could branch into a conversation about fear inoculum now, probably, because I think that's how Tool works. Like, it's not just the heaviness of the riff; they leave space for it and they build you into it, and it's the contrast of what comes before and after it that gives it the impact. So if you want to give people the real or try to lead people, let's say, into a position where they can experience the real weight of a sync, I think it's a lot like telling a joke or making a really good song or anything else that's reliant on vibe and timing and subtle misdirection and other things like that can create an artificial pocket of kind of null pocket, a background on which then you can give someone the big God blast that you're trying to do, I don't know.
Yeah, I felt this a lot making YouTube videos. Exactly. That I remember there was a time when I would watch a film and I would want to like share like absolutely everything that I could possibly see in that film. I remember I had an extremely long analysis of Eyes Wide Shut
Mm.
years ago, which I sadly deleted. I would like to see what it
Mm.
was, but it was the kind of video that was like, I don't know, 10 or 20 videos of me just talking about the movie, to the point where, like you say, it was almost like explaining a joke too much or something like that.
Yeah, I've had that.
Like,
Yeah, feeling recently. Yeah.
and like, and it's amazing to me sometimes how, and I think it sort of, it
I caught
hurts.
myself like
Mm,
literally explaining a joke in one of my analysis. I was like dissecting this joke to death, and
right.
instantly like I had a moment of self-awareness about it. I was like, oh, I'm one of these assholes now. Anyway, continue.
Right. I mean, and I mean, I think, yeah, there. It's funny because, you know, there are moments in my life when I enjoy that kind of, like, let's say, you know, that sort of critical theory approach of just
Yes.
analyzing
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
to death. I find that really enjoyable. But it's funny how some,
Recreational analysis is what we
right.
call it. Yeah.
And it's strange how, I suppose it's kind of painful for my ego or something, because sometimes I feel as if I don't share everything, it's like there's something painful about it. Like,
Yes.
oh, you know,
Yeah.
I'm missing out on, there's this sort of like a completionist perfectionism kind of thing
Yeah.
of I need, and I noticed this when I made
Completionist is a great word for it.
right. I I made this analysis of a a Bug's Life, the Pixar movie, and I didn't mention everything that I saw in the film. In fact, I didn't even mention some of the heavier
Yes.
sync stuff, because the script that I wrote was already too long. It, like, if I added more stuff, it kind of like killed the impact of the stuff that I'd already written. So it
Yes.
was almost as if, in order to preserve the life of what I had written, I decided to keep it short.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's strange, but it
I'm
kind
getting a
of,
real
yeah.
education in this at the moment,
Mm,
doing this like commercial video editing stuff. Because
right.
I'm
Yeah.
realizing really that's kind of what they're paying you for. Like they're
Mm,
paying you to go through this huge pile of unorganized, largely unorganized footage that can be like hours and hours of stuff, and then boil that down to a 2-minute thing that has a shape to it, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and it's not clear how to do that. You just kind of have to know how to do, like, you have to have a feel for video and storytelling and all that kind of thing.
Mm,
Um, it's an interesting domain of like big synthetic operations like that.
yeah.
I wonder if neural nets aren't going to start coming for those jobs too eventually. But at the moment, anyway, you need a
Mm,
human brain to really effectively boil down that much info into
right.
something digestible.
That would be interesting. Yeah. Hadn't thought of that. Neural nets
Yeah,
editing.
neural nets training on edit aesthetics. You know, I bet they
Right.
could. I bet they could pick it up pretty
Mm,
easily. I don't know.
yeah. Like, how many frames do,
Yeah,
like,
like just
close-ups
something basic, like how to
last?
cut a dialogue shot. You know,
Yeah.
like what are the aesthetics? Like when do you go in for a close up? When do you go in for a long shot? Like
Mm,
how often, you know, like, do you switch? And do you switch on word transitions or do you switch? You know, it just they could learn things that would probably make them pretty good at it. I don't know.
yeah.
It's a little
Yeah.
frightening.
Yeah. Yes. You
I
know,
mean,
it's funny.
Facebook already tries to do weird stuff like that. You
Mm.
know, they make these automated movies that are like, uh, your
Oh,
friend,
really?
like your friendship with
Oh.
Alan Waller, and it's just like a bunch. They've like selected clips, you know, and like photographs, and done little Ken Burns zooms on them and things to make them. You know what I'm
You're
talking
right.
about?
Yeah.
I'm pretty. There must be auto-generated in some very simple way, but they're funny anyway.
Right, but I see what you mean. That is like the beginning of something
Yes,
more complex. Yeah.
totally. Yeah, yeah.
Funny.
I'm sorry. that was like a tangent. That was like a tangentially related anecdote to what you were saying. And
Well,
now I'm confused about where we are in the conversation.
no, in fact, I actually wanted to say something related to that because
Uh-huh.
I I just I made another video today. I seem to be sort of
Yeah, you're on a
in the
roll.
mood. and I, for the first time in, I don't know, maybe my life, I'm editing it in this
Yes.
in the sense that I'm cutting out all of the dead space
Yes.
in between words, and cutting out stuff that I don't like, or just mainly just cutting out the dead air. And
Have you
wow,
never done that kind of editing before?
not on a
So,
vlog, I
uh-huh,
don't
uh-huh, uh-huh.
think.
Interesting.
Not no.
Right, like
In
in
fact,
an
I don't think
analysis
so.
video, you work off scripts often, right? So that's probably
Right.
pretty tuned. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I'm being amazed at how it
Bad
changes things.
human beings are at speaking. That's what I'm amazed by. Is I'm like, wow, I'm not good at speaking. I stop all the time, and there are these like, it's like my speech unit just like fails, and it's like
Yeah.
and then like the next piece comes like everyone's doing that all the time, but somehow we kind of don't notice it. But wow, I noticed it on video, and I really had the impression of like a machine that can barely do something. We can barely speak, Alan. It really doesn't work very well. It's, it needs a way bigger. But there's some kind of bandwidth problem. It just
Yeah.
hiccups all the time.
Well, in fact, that's funny because what I've been noticing, and part of why I decided to edit this video is because I'm getting uh worse and worse at speaking quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that it has to do with sync, with the individuation
I
process, with
think so too. I have the same feeling. The
like,
ideas are just getting
yeah,
harder to express. I don't know.
the ideas are getting so hard to express, and there's like almost a physical component to it,
Hmm.
as if I am becoming very, very sensitive, much more sensitive
Mm.
physically than I was before to
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
minute little energetic changes and
Yes.
shit
Yeah.
like
Me
that.
too. Yeah. Yeah. It's very weird.
And it's strange because then it
This would
just,
all seem to be
yeah,
reinforcing this kind of we're in a secret club kind of vibe, though, wouldn't you say? Like,
we're, oh, right.
just
Well,
I'm just thinking, like, if I'm someone who knows nothing about sync, I just walked into this website. I'm like, what is this? And I'm listening to these dudes talking about energetic changes in their in their body or whatever. Like,
yeah,
what is going on? I mean, that's the thing, though, is I'm not even sure exactly how to describe these things because on the one hand, they're not anything. They're
mm,
complete non-events. These things. On the other hand, I really have noticed changes in all aspects of my life, and certainly physically, that
yeah,
really do seem to all be related to sync.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't know, and it's like it already exists in a therapeutic healing kind of context via Jung, and well, anyway, he was just bringing something to speech that was being practiced forever, probably.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree that so there are several things that that vision you expressed earlier about
Mm.
all of us sort of becoming a huge kind of like blob. Well,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I also believe in that. That's the weird thing, that I also
Mm.
believe in that. I suppose it's just
Yeah,
that.
it seems inescapable. Like I can't. It's a very
Hmm,
inescapable vision. This
yeah,
human kumbaya holding hands at the end of time. Yeah, I believe
yeah.
it too. I'm afraid to say.
That's yeah. It's funny because I think that like the times when I've been close to that state of mind, be it via sync or psychedelics, meditation, or
Hmm.
lucid dreaming, or whatever thing it may be, I do get the feeling like you said, that it's a linear progression, that it's something that is awaiting in the future.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I suppose it's almost like the only thing that confuses me is that it's so non-linear, the whole
Mm.
way in which it presents itself, that I wonder to what extent it happens. In some sense, it must definitely happen in the future. I think that
Mm.
it must happen in the future. It's just that because it's not happening now, so it happens at some other point. It's just that
Right.
I feel as if it
Or or or
dissolves
or
the
or is it happening now? Hold on.
right. Well, that's yeah, right, exactly.
I
Like,
see what you mean. Of course, it
mhm,
isn't. It quite clearly isn't happening now.
mm,
But
mm,
at the same time, it's happening. I don't know. There's some kind of an idea that a friend of mine put into my head at one point, which was
mm,
the idea that Christ never left the cross. It's an
mm,
eternal return of that scene,
yeah,
basically. And that seems to align so strongly with Philip K. Dick's vision of
yeah,
the empire ongoing, and
mm,
this continuous struggle between tyranny and liberation or something. I don't know.
mm, mm.
I don't
Yeah.
know. It's very. I mean, look, it's we started off here talking about how we can't express this stuff in words so well anymore. And we're just right in the middle of like this whole issue of the intersection of linear history and
Mm,
eternal goings on. It's very hard to get a basic handle on it because it doesn't even make sense to just the way I described that, even like as if things could happen in eternity. Nothing can actually happen there,
mm,
I
mm,
guess.
mm. Yeah.
Or everything's happening, which is the same
Mm,
as nothing happening.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I guess that's the thing that there
What
are.
constitutes a
Mm,
happening? It already has in it, like it already has these temporal assumptions in it. It's
yeah,
so hard to get outside of it, or impossible maybe to get outside of it. I don't
and
know.
I suppose like because these categories are so big, it also like um I sometimes feel like I feel a desire to go to a smaller scale of category
Mm,
and say, for example, s- specific things like I I want to write a song or something, and that's something that is a specific event that can take place, and I and then what I mean is that let's take into the realm of the spiritual or whatever that what is it about this huge lucid dream psychedelic reality thing
mm,
that on the one hand it seems desirable, and on the other hand it seems absolutely inevitable. um,
mm.
so there must be within that experience, maybe there are smaller experiences that I would like from that, um, and to maybe I
Yes.
don't know,
Yeah.
like that maybe there instead of uh, this kind of bliss picture of like it being a huge kind of experience of constant bliss or whatever, different
Right.
religions
Yeah. I don't
experience
know
that.
that I have that impression exactly. Sorry,
Right,
I guess I
right.
probably do give off that vibe a little bit or something. I don't know that
Well,
it's that I necessarily think it's that kind of. I think that's a very like a Christian kind of um view almost. Like it's a very like
yeah.
whitewashed. Like I imagine it's going to be incomprehensible. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I think the only way that we can understand it. Oh, well, okay. Like there's that thing you go through with Sync where it becomes very horrible and
Mm,
there's a deep horror to it, And that's basically how, like, for me anyway, that was just like how I experienced a lot of sync before I knew what it was. I mean, not that we know
Yeah.
what it is. God, it's impossible to say anything about this. Before we knew anything about it, I just didn't know what it was, and I still don't know what it is. But now I know that it's not purely sinister. At the time, because it was just a big question mark that was behaving very oddly, I was very afraid of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that you relate to this space of, and you know, part of what I was horrified about, I think, was fundamentally it was a feeling of letting madness in somehow. You know,
Yeah.
what you're describing, it's so interesting, because I had an interest in the art of the insane and things like that. They had a real
Hmm.
potency on them,
Yeah.
and yet, so I was attracted to them and repelled by them, you know, at the same time. And then Sync initially was just a big confrontation with that, just that, like, can I draw kind of crazy pictures and just let myself do that, or think kind of crazy thoughts and just let that happen?
Yeah.
um, and that was very tenuous for a while, and then it's like you break through into a new tier with it. And I did a complete inversion. Like, it went from being something I was very afraid of to suddenly it was guardian angels, like,
Yeah.
helping me, and it was purely like purely benevolent, you know. And then some negative things related to Sync happened, and then I went back to more of a trickster attitude towards it.
Mm.
I don't know what I think about it now. I regard it as a big stream of information coming through with many potential sources and many, you know, I just regard, like, I never know what I'm getting into when I start pulling on a pattern. You
Yeah.
know, maybe it's an isolated pattern. Maybe it uncovers a network of patterns spanning hundreds of films that all describe 9/11 in amazing ways, you know.
Mm.
or maybe it's some other complete out of, like, you know, it's just and
Mm.
then you know, so it's strange, like, you have an expectation set and it destroys that expectation set, so you move around to the other opposite expectation set, then it destroys that, and then each time a binary gets blown out, the only thing left to do, if you don't want to just oscillate there forever, is to move adjacently around the circle. So you
Yeah.
hop to a really different, or not really different, but a somewhat different perspective. And then it finds a way to undercut that too. It's like enlightenment in the inverse or something. It's pulling the rug out from underneath you, like, from every perspective, and then eventually that creates an inverted middle
Mm. Mm.
of something. I don't know. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? We're
Yeah.
talking about circles and things now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
No.
it's
No.
really not language anymore. I'm describing some kind of picture systems thing.
Mm. Mm. No, but definitely. I mean, I think, yeah, exactly. That's what always confuses me about it, is how I always am driven to, yeah, to the center
Mm.
of a circle, exactly. Be it like the yin yang or a mandala. And I'm I'm wondering, I think one thing was coming through my head right now is, so that in dreams I have interests that I don't have in my waking life, in the sense that, for
Huh.
example, maybe, well, and I mean this in a very mundane kind of way, like, if in a dream I'm in a castle, whatever, then in the dream I'm interested in maybe exploring the castle and seeing what's there. Like,
Mm.
this is an interest that I don't have specifically in my waking life, simply because I'm not in a castle, in
Yes.
a literal sense. I'm in a castle in a different sense, but not like in that sort of literal 3D video game
Right.
sense.
Right.
And I keep imagining, like, in it's just the nerd within me, I think. I
Sorry,
keep
I'm
imagining
laughing
it
a
as,
little bit at 3D video game environment. Instead of describing it as like just a spatial environment. Like, you went to the artificial, like the model. Like, anyway.
I I know it's funny. That's see, this is funny because I feel as if three dimensionality is something that I've experienced more with video games than with waking life.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Hmm.
And I think, strictly speaking, it is a video game anyway. Like 3D
Right.
perception is just some weird thing.
Right.
Weird illusion your brain is making. Yeah.
And I keep wondering, like, in a state of being where dreams and waking reality are fused somehow, or things are fused in this weird way, then I think there is a part of me that just would purely enjoy the playfulness of it, of just like exploring weird castles and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I keep thinking that there's something about that that is probably very like, yeah, that maybe the sort of, there is this strange thing with, it's a very important thing, and at the same time there is like, there are specific quests. There are specific things you can do.
Yeah.
Like there is like the like just sort of going up the castle stairs and seeing what's in the I don't know how to say it, like that sometimes I get very focused in on like the individuation quest, which is a very like big meta quest where every single thing, like going up
Yes.
to the castle or going to the supermarket, is all representative of a big meta quest, which is so big that I can only express it in terms of union of opposites, mandala, and things like that. And I do. But it's almost as if that big meta quest sometimes it gets so big that I yearn for like small micro,
yes, yeah.
like editing a video or going for a train ride, just small things.
Yes, totally. I've been doing a lot of those tiny things, trying to live in a new city. Just figuring, like, I have no routine, so I have to kind of build them by exploring and figuring out how to optimize, like, just on the basis of like, here's a grocery store that has things I like and need.
Yeah.
I'll try to remember where that is, like very basic kind of like environmental resource mapping stuff. And it has me feeling very instinctual. I don't know, like I feel very like in tune with my animal nature, I suppose, when I'm exploring new spaces. And it seems to all relate to video games and dreams as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Video. Right, because and that's the thing when we both talk about sync, it's every small, the cool thing about every small little event being linked in bigger layers of events is precisely that, like, if in the days when I'm finding it difficult to deal with it, I'm just focused on like the big mandala picture, and it gets so abstract that it difficult, makes my life difficult. But on days when I'm dealing with it better, what the cool thing about it is that small microcosmic things like going to the grocery store or meeting up with some friends are suddenly like extremely beautiful, meaningful, cosmic kind of things.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, and they all kind of tie into one another, and it's all video gamey in that way.
Yeah.
It's strange. I don't know.
Yeah.
It makes me think of, this is taking a dark turn, but it makes me think of, we've spoken of how it seems as if a lot of violence seems to be done from a video gamey kind of perspective as well.
Yeah, right, yes.
Like that there is a way in how that it seems as if maybe we live in a moment where maybe my kind of just throwing an idea out there, is that maybe this video gamey approach to life, this playful, but also it's playful, but it's also important. Like you're taking
Yeah.
the quest important, like seriously, but it's also super fun and super scary at the same time. This sort of mix of wow of things. It's it's as if that is not really present in the kind of stories that we tell ourselves in the status quo, right? In the
Yes.
status quo, the idea is that nothing is fun, nothing is really a game, and nothing is really important. I mean, that's
Right.
super a straw man, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think that
No.
it can be easy to feel that way, and that maybe it's as if the repressed desire for life to be a game explodes in a violent way. I'm not sure.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, there's just a
Uh,
very interesting and long connection, between video games and violence, and
right.
just games and violence, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even, I'm just kind of sweeping through my head. There's Pong, like we go way back early video games. Like
Mm.
Pong is not violent in a representational sense, but it's still objects colliding in
Yes.
space. And if you scan that back through sports, those are kind of ritualized battles sometimes. And then if you look at even like how animals play, like how dogs play, like they play rough sometimes. It's
Yeah.
clearly like it would be a fight if it weren't for a context that says we don't actually want to kill each other. We're
Yeah.
just, we're letting off steam or whatever it is. We're
Hmm.
bonding in our dog way.
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's it's the thing about it's like dreams are that way too, though. They're all connected to animal instincts, and so many of them place you in this kind of arena-like situation where you're running away from something, or chasing after something,
Yeah.
or doing battle with some foe or some monster. Um, I think it's strange when people look at video games, for instance, and say, "Oh gosh, look at the violence that these video games are causing." It's like, I don't know, violent video games have nothing on my violent dreams. Like, let me tell you,
Oh, yeah. No, same.
it's like
Yeah.
oh, this media is so terrible. But it's like as soon as I close my eyes, the things that are happening in my brain anyway are much more extreme and weird, and just any metric you can pick. There's more of it in the unconscious than we can squeeze into any of our stupid, art illusions at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it's not so much about the effect that games are having that maybe. I mean there are weird effects of it. Like I think games train us to think transactionally. That's one
Mm.
weird thing about them. They're not good at representing other aspects of reality. They're very
Yeah.
good at representing simple systems loops, which is interesting maybe because it strikes me that that's something we really need to be educated in, because one very big simple systems loop called the greenhouse effect is apparently something that we're incapable of grasping on
Yeah.
the whole. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's not even about grasping, it's just not about believing in the truth of that such a simple little loop could ruin so many things so rapidly.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so I don't know, it's all of this though, like violence and the evolution of consciousness
Well,
and
yeah.
the environment and all of this, and then the display is this thing that's now, cinema was modeling the human being in a certain way that was modeling our memory, our visual memory, kind of.
Yeah.
um, it wasn't modeling our ability to move through a space with decisions. Video games model that, and that brings in this dynamic systems aspect. And I don't know, it's just crazy to think about what sync might look like in the video games of the near future. Knowing what we now know, maybe, about how it is manifesting in cinema. Then
Yeah.
again, I wonder if maybe there's something about the closed box of cinema, about the
Mm.
constraints of it, that might make it a better sync attractor, generally speaking, than other even more complex mediums might. Hard to say.
Mm.
That was a big ramble.
Yeah, no, God, I definitely think I've been thinking, yeah, that the whole thing with violence is like it seems super important with sync and individuation and all that because it's like you say, bodies colliding, and I feel as if there is sort of generally a whole series of feelings that our culture tells us are bad.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about sadness. That I think one of the weirdest things about sync for me, I remember when I started having like sync stuff, is that it filled me with sadness, but it was extremely beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
And there was a strange like cognitive dissonance because when I was a teenager, I was really depressed, and I would have never sort of seen anything beautiful about those feelings. But at the same time, I wasn't even embracing those feelings. I wasn't
To
accepting
me, what you're
them.
describing is almost heartbreak or something. Sad, but the beauty. I don't know. Yeah, sync will shatter your emotions that way. In my opinion, that's a worse place to be in almost than just being sad, because it's sad with a poignancy. I'm sad in a painting now. Someone's captured it. You know?
Wow.
Feeling.
I love that. Yeah. Well, it's funny because what it made me feel is that when there are certain feelings with sadness, let's say even physical feelings, physical sensations, and things like that, that I feel as if when I'm considering them to be bad feelings, I don't enjoy them.
Right.
But that somehow there are moments and states of consciousness, and sync seems to do this, that make me suddenly not judge those feelings and emotions in that way. And suddenly it's as if, wow, the thing that before was like a bad experience, a painful experience, is suddenly now like super beautiful.
Isn't that interesting? It seems as if it was the judgment that made it negative, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to, unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the podcast, but it was some psychedelic culture cast, you know?
Yeah.
And one of the people on that podcast had this mantra that was like, have you tried enjoying it? And that really got under my skin. I was like, oh, yeah, exactly. Next time I'm having some terrible experience, I'm just going to see if there's a possibility of enjoying it. Is there an angle? Is there a wedge I can expand a little bit in there to like carve out a little bit of enjoyment, you know?
Totally.
And,
yeah.
And it's like, wow, you really can with almost anything. I mean, really with almost anything.
Yeah.
I can enjoy agonizing pain and other terrible things that you're not supposed to ever enjoy for some reason. But wow, it's a lot better to just enjoy things. And I do think it is a kind of generally psychedelic maneuver or perspective or something. Because it keeps you a little decoupled from the consensus reality's claims about some experience. You can come in with the expectation that maybe I can enjoy it. That's a very different approach, it seems to me.
Yeah. And I think that this aspect of enjoyment and non-enjoyment, I think that this is one of the things that really does make me lean more towards the position of that something actually is going to happen in history. Like, because usually I'm very like reticent to
Blake says it's going to come through an improvement of enjoyment or whatever the wording is.
Oh, really?
He says that so specifically in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
David quotes it at the beginning of Cassandra. It's the big Blake quote that opens it.
Because I
never know exactly what he means there. I assume, I mean, not David. I never know what Blake I don't know what David means either. I never
Mhm.
know what Blake means there, though. Like, I wonder if it seems like he's almost talking about sexual enjoyment, you know,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
hard to know. Yeah.
totally. I mean, because it definitely seems as if the whole thing with enjoying things that are not supposed to be enjoyed because of what culture says is very, it almost has like metaphysical consequences.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like, because so much of our worldview, I think, is built upon this idea that like, well, or that I've been reading books recently that seem to suggest that submission is bad and control is good. For example, that you have to be in control of nature, but you can't submit to nature, and
Yeah,
and stuff
that
like that. So
attitude especially is so funny. Yeah.
so so it's funny because obviously, like, there is something about sync, I think, that um it simultaneously puts you in a position of submission that is enjoyable
Yes. Yeah.
because you're sort of under the whims, not the whims, but you're like directed by things, like you're following someone else's
Ah,
orders
that's
kind
it.
of thing.
You really hit it, because
Mm,
yeah, exactly. There's If we were to make a god of sync, there's a
mm.
very strong chance it would be some kind of dominatrix or something, you know,
Exactly.
because it
Exactly.
has this
Yeah.
quality. It's going to force you to confront something. So Pinhead really makes sense that there's a lot of sync energy around Pinhead. He's a
Yeah.
close god to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is something Terence McKenna, I think, says that in one of his intense mushroom visions, the mushroom personified in front of him as a dominatrix. Because I
Oh,
think,
does he? That's perfect. Oh,
yeah, because
great.
I think he had been sort of asking the mushroom that, he was ready for like something more intense, and then the mushroom kind of like
It
the
morphed into a
mushroom
dominatrix.
when it went and said, "Oh, are you sure?" and then kind of like threw him into a huge like
That's so
mega
funny.
trip. And I mean, I have very vague memories. I don't have many memories of my mushroom trip, but I definitely remember similar kind of things. Not with just one
God,
person,
yeah.
but like with several people hovering like over me, and like it's kind of like the UFO experience, right? You're
Mm, mm.
lying on on a table, and like people are doing things to you.
In
Um,
my longest sustained lucid, so I've had many rounds. I suppose you have too, with this
mhm.
kind of getting more than what you bargained for with magic and so on.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
because I'm always very hungry, you know. And so when I
yes,
first discovered that lucid dreaming was like a thing in my adulthood, I'd had
yeah,
spontaneous ones in my childhood, um, and had been interested in them as a teenager. But when I got to college, for whatever reason, I was like, I'm going to really pursue this now and figure out how to make them happen and all this.
mm,
And anyway, I had like a really long one finally, because the problem had been I could become lucid, but then I would wake up right away because I'd get very excited. So I
yeah,
had been practicing all of these stabilizing techniques I had read about to try
mhm,
to extend the lucid dream experience, and had been having a little bit of success with that. But of course, I wanted more and more and more. I really wanted to be able to just exist forever, basically, in a dream.
yes,
And one night, I kind of got my wish. I found myself in a dream, and then became aware that I was dreaming. And I was like, okay, this is fun. And I started to explore it, and all kinds of crazy things happened.
Mm.
And then I was like, okay, ready to wake up now. And it was like, I didn't wake up. The dream just kept continuing.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, this is kind of a weird problem. I've never had this problem. I've never been aware that I'm dreaming and not able to exit the dream. It's
Mm,
like the opposite problem. Um, and so I started just trying various things, and my brain got very sneaky, and it threw several false awakenings at me. In fact, it threw like I don't know, more than 10 of them at me. This dream just seemed to go
wow.
on, like, from my perspective in the dream, it had gone on for days by the end of it, of just wandering through weird dream spaces. And there was a turn around the middle where it all started to
Wow.
get very sinister. I think it was my fear was increasing that maybe I was dead, or hospitalized or having
Yeah.
some kind of what I don't know what they call it, like can't breathe in your sleep kind of attack or something,
Oh
sleep
fuck
apnea,
yeah.
um, uh, it just turned into this complete nightmare. I finally woke up and it was just a normal night sleep.
Yeah.
But after I had woken up, like it honestly took me many hours. Like it took me like half a day of kind of looking in the mirror every 20 minutes to be like, okay, I'm actually awake. Things are stable. Like a vortex isn't going to open up in the living room or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and then I got,
Wow.
it didn't like deter me. Like I went on to have many more lucid dreaming adventures, but it
Yeah.
taught me a respect for it. That
Yes.
that had been lacking before. And I think I went through the same thing with Sync.
Hmm.
The Hellraiser analysis for me was one that I felt like I got more than, like, up until that point I had just been like, give me more, I can eat more,
Yeah.
give me the ultimate proof of the universe kind of thing. And then that movie approached that for me, or like it gave me the experience of something like that very intensely, and I kind of realized, oh, you don't really want these experiences actually so much, like
Yeah.
to actually I don't, it's hard to explain, like, and I don't want to like
Hmm.
open it up exactly because I'll take over the whole conversation with it, but like that experience of cutting that video together, I don't
Yeah.
know, it just rattled me in a super profound psychedelic sort of way. I can't directly compare it to like a mushroom trip, which I've never had.
Hmm.
Um, it didn't involve visual hallucinations like that, but it involved hallucinations. I could say
Yeah.
that. Like it involved the feeling of invisible spiritual things happening very intensely and physically and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, you were saying in your video too that you kind of regard the psychedelic experience and Sync almost as synonymous, or like one's a subcategory of the other, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I get that impression.
it seems like
Yeah.
it's all about other encounters,
Mm.
in you know, or big other, which is not really other, all that, but
Hmm. Yeah. Well,
it's
and
a
I think
contact experience. All these things.
yes, and I think because you sort of start noticing things that you hadn't noticed before. You start noticing connections between them. It's sort of like, again, Terence McKenna kind of goes into this, and it sort of ties into what you were saying before about Christ always being on the cross. That
Yeah.
I remember with mushrooms, this distinct feeling that this huge, weird thing that I was in is always going on.
Yeah,
Like,
that's interesting.
and that, like,
Mm.
even now as we're Skyping, the feeling that it's somehow it's here is just that, like, we're
Yes.
we're like radio, um we like radios, and we can tune into it or something. I don't know.
Yes.
um and or that it's too traumatic so that we have like a screen memory that's like, us Skyping, and that's like a safe
Yes.
memory that we can kind of
Dude, what if
yeah.
history itself is one big screen memory?
Yeah. No, yeah. I
That's
mean,
basically, that's the Gnostic like view, though. Pretty
holy
much.
man. God, I remember on at the peak of the mushroom thing, exactly, just this feeling that, like,
I guess we don't know that
yeah.
they were stoner philosophers, but come on, they probably were, right? They had to have been partaking of something to facilitate all those weird visions.
Mm, yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe things were truly, well. This was another thing you touched on in your video.
Hmm.
Were things really different then? Was the conscious and were the unconscious and the unconscious closer somehow in antiquity? And there's
Aha.
been it's that kind of
Yeah.
von Neumann view or whatever. That gradually, or not von Neumann. Who am I thinking of? the person who isn't Jung that wrote a big book about the evolution of consciousness. It might actually even just be called that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I actually no.
What is it called?
Think.
I have the internet here.
There is internet.
All my books are in storage. It's like terrible. But anyway, there's this view that I've also heard it articulated recently by, is it McGilchrist, the guy who wrote the big book on the emissary and its master, or whatever, the lateralization of the brain thing. He kind of has a similar idea, maybe that the lateralization or that the hemispheres have become less communicative with each other as history has gone on, or more differentiated from one another or something. Right. But you were expressing a doubt about that, which I also share, which is that I'm just never convinced that human nature is changing fundamentally all that much. I don't know. It's one reasonable question is, how could we even make that determination? We have to rely on weird historical records, which aren't often very good pictures of people's subjectivity, you know.
I think also I often get caught up in the big absolute pictures, which is why I have a craving for like microcosmic stuff. I think it's that I always just think of, like, you know, let's say if I just go to the naive just naively realist religious position or whatever, or
the most popular position in the West today. Everyone loves that one and loves to be friends with people who have that one.
Just the idea that that we're all, that, you know, that we're God, basically, and that therefore you know, that the brain, see, that's the thing. I think I don't give enough respect to particular ideas like the brain. Right. I always see it all as this big dream that's being had by absolute consciousness or whatever, or spirit.
which I also agree with. It just somehow seems like it's both of these. It's like the both that wigs me out.
Totally, exactly. I think that I have like difficulty with the microcosmic scale, the, let's say, historical scale, where things actually are differentiated in space and in time.
Yeah. Do you think this is some weird consequence of technology, of growing up with technology that encourages a weirdly abstracted way of relating to our immediate environments? Maybe not. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking that's what leads me to think that there is an actual progression and change in history. Precisely things like that. Like we were saying before, that this whole thing with like violence and how we see submission as being something bad, that it feels as if that, because it seems to affect our metaphysics, I think, because I think that the perspective we have on the world has something to do with the way in which our culture, what feelings it has towards control and towards submission at one level, that if we were to change the cultural perspective on things like that, then a huge shift in how we perceive reality might occur.
Yes.
And that therefore it seems to me that a change like that is happening.
Yes.
In many areas and in many ways. So that does make me think that, wow, you know, maybe I tend to see things like, yeah, it's all one big eternal dream or whatever, but maybe history is kind of like a flower or something that at some point it actually blooms.
Yes.
Like at some point it actually does completely metamorphize like into a butterfly or something.
Ah, I see.
Uh,
That's very interesting. That's very different than
I don't know.
what you were where you were going in the video initially, which was
Yes,
almost in a parallel universe kind of direction.
right,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
which you really you were kind of convincing me. Like I've been thinking a lot about that the last few days. Like have
Oh,
I
right.
really honestly given this idea a shake, that maybe what we're doing is actually closer to timeline hopping, and maybe it's really the case that there are many timelines in which Back to the Future has none of these details in them, and we've all collectively we've willed
Right.
ourselves into this particular timeline where it does happen to have these accidents, and they're
Mm.
really just accidents. It's just that there's such a multiplicity of potential accidents in the infinite parallel universe scenario that you can just your intention maybe if it's or your belief in it or something,
Mm.
if it's severe enough,
Mm.
can like pop you into a timeline where there are these tiny aspects of reality will be modified according to your search, according to your selection criteria. And then I wonder what would happen if we got, sorry, now,
Mhm.
all of this is
Yeah.
pretend, of course. It's been pretend from the beginning. But, like, what if the entire human race collectively meditated intention together on a single image of the reality they would like to see?
Yeah.
And like maybe we could like fully teleport the entire species into a better timeline.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is kind of some kind of like apocalypse crisis ideation. Maybe a magical timeline hop can save us from the two. But I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know
I
what you
think
mean
about
though,
this stuff.
totally. Oh, totally. I can exactly. I always have this idea in the back of my mind that somehow maybe a huge uh crisis on planet Earth would actually cause a huge change in consciousness, which in turn might completely transform the nature of the dream, kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. I'm always
Um,
waiting for this total transformation of the dream. I'm so into that. It's like the last big song at the rock concert. Come on already. We've
right,
teased
right.
enough with this. Terrence has been, blowing marijuana colored smoke up my ass about this idea for 20 years. I'm ready now for this actual inversion of the collective vision. Yeah.
And at the same time, I also like. I'm wondering how, um, when exactly if
I'm not
I
ready for it at all. Let's hope it doesn't happen in our lifetimes. I think it would be terrible. But
well, yeah, that's the strange thing. I think that okay, so uh, it's as if if we exactly. So imagine that maybe reality adapts itself to your perspective or whatever it may be. The thing is as well that my perspective, like all of the unconscious elements that form it, may be sentient in the way
mm,
that the Red Book kind of describes it, right?
right, right, right.
So that in some, like, imagine that there are all sorts of strange little ways in which myself can be divided into other kinds of selves, like Philemon and Salome, and that so then it becomes very fractal and
Those are
strange.
characters from the Red
Oh,
Book.
you're right.
For
Yeah,
folks who don't know anything.
exactly.
Yes.
From Jung's Red Book, exactly that. This sort of feeling of descending into your inner life and discovering actual structure and life in it. That
Yes.
in that kind of picture, it makes me think, then it's not so clear what I want or what my perspective is. That maybe so that the if reality reflects perspective in some way, and I don't even know why I'm like I don't I don't have like the I'm not sure how to even argue that at the moment, but that if it does, then what is my perspective if my perspective may be formed out of a whole set of different characters and
Yes,
places,
a whole world.
a whole
That's
world. Yeah,
where Jung
exactly.
goes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that um maybe it's not so fluid, that maybe it's not like that I could um that there is a mix of fluidity and non-fluidity, that exactly, that you could change the way that reality is, but at the same
Mm.
time that we exist in a whole series of structures that have a certain solid nature to them.
Yes.
In fact, maybe that's sort of what the physical world is. It's solid, it's stable. There is something about it that is beyond my control at the moment to change. Like I can't, like that maybe there is something about like my room at the moment that's
Yeah.
kind of like Philemon or Salome in the Red Book, that is, it's a reality that is a part of me, but is also not me. It has its own
Yes.
life, its own life, its own existence. um I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what to say
It's a
about
big important phenomenological realization, I guess. That your experience is that way. It's
it.
everything about you is that way. It turns out. That you have an objective and a subjective part, and they're always together.
Yeah.
They're never apart. Oh God,
Well,
we're like giggling like I don't know what
if
this
I if
is.
I
It
was
is.
if I was stoned right now, I wouldn't be able to stop laughing.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
that was a really cool
That
like
was just so
poem.
funny. Yeah. Now I don't even remember what I was trying to articulate. Shit.
I know
I'm
that.
just conforming to every single pothead stereotype at the moment. Terrible haikus, bad memory, ideas about
I
the
love
end
it.
of time and all this.
I love it. I love it.
It is true though. There's
But,
something about that drug and time though that's very particular to it.
mm,
The time dilation stuff. I
oh
don't
yeah.
experience that so much with it anymore. But I remember when I first started experiencing this drug, it was very pronounced. Like I put on that famous Enigma song, Sadness, and it was like that song went on for like 2 years. Like I can't even like it's weird to think back to it, like
Wow.
how pronounced it was. I felt a little bit like I was trapped in the lucid dream again. It was like, when is this song gonna end? Like, and then
Yeah.
I came away from it too with the feeling that I had understood that song in a way that, like, I had never understood any song. And I feel like that's a pretty common, like, marijuana story. It's like very common. Like it goes together with art appreciation in some weird way.
Yeah.
Art appreciation and time fuckery. So it's definitely the sync, like, pairing of choice, probably. At least in at least on the art analysis side of it.
I love that slogan.
Yeah.
The sync pairing of choice.
No,
No,
dude, I seriously,
totally though.
I'm really
Yeah.
thinking about this because I'm like,
Yeah.
well, there are like movie theaters around the country, where you can go and get like wine or like nice bourbon and watch a movie.
Yeah, man.
I'm just
Yeah.
waiting for whenever it becomes like legal to like own a business where you can smoke weed indoors. I feel like someone's going to pair that with movies and make $1 million,
Dude,
probably.
I think like if that happens, that could definitely be like a huge catalyst.
Yes,
Cinemas
I really
with
think it could.
fucking smoking. Like,
Yeah.
that would be a huge, like, like, wow.
No, it is. There is some domain. Like, I've been very aware of, like, I'm sure we all have. Like, sync feels a little bit like some ultimate stoner joke, like taken to religious. Like, it's not a joke now. Now it's real. Like you can get so high and watch a movie so intensely that God really does speak. Like, actually does, though, speak to you through it. Not in a jokey way. Like,
Yeah, man. And I mean,
that
if a
to me
whole,
just
yeah,
makes it like the internet is gonna die for it as soon as they can understand it a little bit, you know, because it's just such a perfect joke becoming real, like in this insane pop culture, like drug culture, like techno weirded out way. I still believe, dude, someday it's gonna have its moment in the sun in a bigger way.
yeah,
Specifically, this movie sync thing. We
yeah,
all know synchronicity is gonna rise probably, but I think media sync in particular, you know, gosh, it's
yeah,
a weird new thing.
yeah, yeah. No, it definitely seems it would. It seems strange that the movie syncs wouldn't become seen in a mainstream way
Yeah.
because of how absolutely sort of
Well, and
and
they have been. I feel like I'm always still
mm,
cosplaying a reality a little bit where Back to the Future predicts didn't happen, because it kind of feels a little bit like it didn't, in a sense, you know, because
yeah,
the impact wasn't what a lot of people were hoping for, you know.
yeah, yeah,
But I don't know if that's true. I wonder often if that maybe the impact really was a lot bigger than we know yet. It's impacting something invisible. How would we know yet? It's communicating to
yes,
the unconscious, that piece. Joe did a really
yeah,
good job there. It presents it as a joke a little bit, so your ego can get along with it. But all the real actions happening unconsciously. And for me, it took a couple years for it to land, you know. So I don't know. Maybe it's just
yes.
going to
Oh
take
yeah,
people a
yeah,
lot longer for it to land.
yeah. Well, that I mean, it keeps amazing me how there are still daily comments on that video,
I know, it's such a tent pole, you know,
like every
beacon
day.
kind of. I know, it's so
It keeps,
crazy.
like you say, exactly. It seems like it's like a meteorite that is still impacting. It's like
Yes, yeah,
the
yeah.
shock wave is um yeah.
And it does seem to be related to density, which I can make a terrible Back to the Future joke about, you know. There's that whole destiny density pun with
Oh
George or
shit.
whatever. But it is like that. It's like he cut to it's an editing feat, you know. People don't get it yet that this community is pioneering edit aesthetics in a new way. Like
Yes. Yeah.
Joe Joe crunched a thing, like a crazy big thing, like a long time ago now too. It's important to
Yeah.
remember. It's like back in 2015, right? So, and he had
Yeah.
been working on it for like a few years leading up to that and all that. And obviously the Kotze stuff goes back even farther, but just specifically Joe, like that Back to the Future predicts is so short, but
Yes.
it has the whole picture in it. I don't feel that I've really seen much more in the end than there is than you know, beyond what's already contained in that film. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like filling in detail on it, you know. But
Yeah.
wow, that thing just really even like nailed it. So anyway, it deserves to have a big impact.
Yeah.
So I'm going to choose to believe that is going to.
Well, that's amazing because it kind of leads us back to the beginning of the conversation because
Oh no, yeah, we did a circle.
yeah, because I think that like you say, editing is
Yeah.
so important here. And like you say, watching movies from a sync perspective is a masterclass in editing
Yes,
because you're sort of jumping all over the place. You're seeing
totally.
where one thing is cut and then the other thing begins. Like
Well, and I'm kind of living the proof of that at the moment because I mean, I was doing video editing and stuff before I got into sync, but after sync, I really just watching these movies in slow motion so repetitively, you know, and then
yeah,
also making my own videos. You were talking about editing, like cutting out dead air and stuff. I was doing that um, since I started Sync Century. So I've done many hundreds of hours of that kind of thing,
yes,
and it really, at the end of it, like I came out of it, I'm like a really good video editor now. I didn't
Yeah.
have any intention of becoming a great video editor, but now, I just moved to New York, and it's like people will pay me to do this now. It's fantastic. I gained a really actionable skill that's currently allowing me to exist in a much better configuration in my life. So no one can ever say that synchronicity isn't practical. It at least did that for me. It gave me a new bankable ability.
Yeah.
But this edit thing is so interesting to me because it's like non-linear editors, like that's what they call Premiere and Final Cut and things like that.
Okay.
That's just what they're called because you can move video around non-linearly in them, and it's it was meant to be in comparison to the actual linear tape splicing methods when it was physical. Now it moved into software, so it became non-linear editors. But I'm always making this joke to myself now that, yeah, exactly, God is like the ultimate non-linear editor. It's like it's a description of sync somehow. You can think of sync like edits. They're funny edits, but edits that express authorship, which edits do, of course. We're not very sophisticated yet, it seems to me, about interpreting edits. The edit remains a little invisible for many people. Less and less, I think. We're becoming more and more aware of how you can create a narrative with an edit as more and more people become editors, making things for social media and YouTube and so on. We get a taste of how that works, and then we see how edits can disguise and reveal things, and how they can be used to make statements and so on. I don't know. That thing is so interesting to me, that whole like dimension of this, that it's not just we're all becoming video editors. Being a video editor is something you have to be able to do to exist in the world. Increasingly, you have to be able to film yourself and edit yourself a little bit for even just things like job interviews and stuff. It's often remote now, Yeah, it's weird.
Well, that's funny because exactly like you said, we spend our days watching video footage. Like people, like most of people's leisure time is spent watching YouTube videos or Netflix or stuff like that. So you can tell that when something is well edited or edited in a specific way, exactly, it hits in different ways. It has different kind of impact, and so I really feel that the future of sync videos, to put it one way, like I think that editing is a big part of it. That editing and I suppose sort of like the production of it, that suddenly it's not so much what you're saying in the video, or that what you're saying is also the editing. It's not just what's on the screen, it's how the images on the screen are bleeding into one another.
Right.
And you can really tell that because I've noticed that I remember making movie videos, the kind of videos where I felt personally that everything was a little tighter and just better constructed, they would usually land better. Like I felt like the points that the video was trying to make were conveyed. So conveying sync it seems to like I don't know, that's it. That's the thing. It has to do with because
it's also it's so funny because it's a perfect psychological metaphor, editing, for alchemy and individuation and all this. It's like you're cutting things apart and gluing them back together to make your story more resonant, more harmonic.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so like Alan Green's new video is a clear example of that. I think that the video has such good editing and pacing and the music choices, like the production of the video. I was amazed that he even
Yes.
I think he even hired musicians to play original music for the
Yeah,
video,
I think you got original music for it. I'm a
which
little
I think is
jealous. I was hoping to do the first like original music sync video blowout thing, but it's hard to be upset when it's so good.
Mm,
Like, yeah, 9/11 Spider-Verse is
yeah.
definitely, I think, I mean, I love the vision and the voice too, but this one just
Yes.
feels really special. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was thinking about this because I've been binge watching a bunch of like video essays recently, and there's such sort of good stuff, really well
Mm.
produced with nice kind of, and I've always been like, I've always sort of wanted to defend the value of completely lo-fi kind of slightly
Yeah, I have a
badly
complicated
edited
relationship
stuff.
to that as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly, and that's sort of how I've been doing things all the time. But I guess I'm starting to I have I want to try the editing thing out because watching some of those video essays, it really makes me see that the potential for sync, like if there were sync videos that had those kind of production values. um
Yes, yeah, yeah. I've been thinking about that because I
mm,
I could probably pull that off. It's just that I kind of hate it or something, and I'm embarrassed by it or something.
yes,
Um,
exactly, yeah.
yeah, I feel like it's going to be corny and that because I'm not actually critiquing this. It will probably be
Yeah.
brilliant. I'm just describing my weird fears about it or something. But I
Mhm.
feel like I'm often like it would be corny because we actually have the golden nugget, though, or at least from my perspective. Like I feel like I don't want it to seem like it. Everything that I come across, it seems like it's trying to blow up a grain of rice and make it seem like it's a diamond, And they just throw effects and convincing verbiage and like strong, scripted, handsome people like telling
Yeah.
you all the bullet points, and it it starts to like actually turn me off to it. I'm like, it doesn't, if you
Mm.
had something real, you just present it to me humbly, wouldn't you? It doesn't need
Mhm.
all this
Mhm.
nonsense,
Mhm. Yeah,
to
yeah,
my
yeah.
like critical like me frowning while I watch videos on the internet or something. But um
No, totally.
so for that reason, this is so I just
Yeah.
decided I had to do
Yeah.
both. Like I just do both. I make the
Mm.
Sync Century analysis videos, which are a lo-fi aesthetic, although I actually slave over them,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I try to keep them deliberately a little like cut and paste glue stick composition notebook from the 90s, except it's video like look, um,
Yeah.
but then at the same time I can't let go of this idea like you're describing of like doing the real slick perfect presentation
Mm.
that and it's not just about a reach thing. It's not just like maybe that could spread the idea a little more. it's
Right,
it's also
exactly.
somehow about the for me it was well this relates to it's like getting good at editing. I got good at it because I was trying to express the glory of God
Yeah,
in
yeah,
these
yeah.
videos. Like I took it that seriously. I was like, I want to try to match the perfection of
Mm.
the object I think I'm seeing in these films, which is this beautiful, weird sync diamond. So I want to cut the video like a diamond. I want it to be beautiful and perfect, and every part relates to every other part with, I just wanted that like level. And so I went into it like a crazy person with,
Yeah.
frame by frame effects sometimes and like crazy stuff to get it
Mm.
timed and all this. I would not have been motivated to do that otherwise. So I think there's an interesting thing with art and about what happens when you let your creativity aspire in the direction
Yeah.
of the big things,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that needs to happen. But it's almost like the compensation for it too is that I need at the same time to be able to just draw an ugly sketch of it on the back of a napkin. If I can't do that, it's become too sacred. I was raised in a religion where there's like just a handful of images of the prophet of this religion, and they're very guarded. You're not meant to look at these under normal circumstances.
Mhm.
They want to be able to tightly control. You have to kind of walk into this temple, this whole experience, so that by the time you get to this image, you're prepped to have a numinous experience with it.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to anybody, but I just think that's terrible.
Mhm.
Images, like, I mean, I get it from the art
Yeah, yeah.
standpoint. It's the same thing. Like, you don't want your album release to be leaked. You want to control the
Right.
the context, you know?
Yeah.
I get it, but images just aren't that way, though. Images in particular, once you've seen it, it's going to pop back into your head at some point. And then what have you done? You've created a strange thing where it's like, never think about this image except in these contexts. But that just
Yeah.
deprives the image of life. If you want it to be a living image, you've
Yes.
got to let it go where it wants to go, which is going to be all over the place, probably,
Mhm,
because images
mhm.
are very promiscuous with each other.
Yeah.
So promiscuous in time as well, not only in space.
I love that. See, exactly. I think, and this is funny because I think this is kind of the point that I was unconsciously trying to make, I think, is that now it's not just that I would like to have better production value. It's just that I feel like if I don't, then my videos won't make any sense. Like
right.
it's getting to a point, like exactly, I feel as if there's moments in my life where, like you said, I need to have the ability to draw something on a napkin and have the sacredness of like the Philip K. Dick thing of God in the trash can, of
Yes.
just
Yeah. Exactly.
the sacredness of really mm, like releasing something that is very spontaneous and very rough from a conventional point of view.
Yes.
Uh, and I feel like that has been very important for me. But it's almost as if I'm at a point now where if I don't script my videos and cut out the dead air, it just doesn't make any sense. Like it's as if I'm at a point in the experience now where I'm finding it very difficult to express myself just like
Yes.
me in front of a camera kind of thing.
I don't know what I'm expressing until I edit it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's too like it's reached the level where things are being like, I'm articulating things. I don't really know what I'm articulating. And then when I watch all that footage,
Yeah.
I gradually start to get, oh, I get it. You know, it's like, but it really, it comes together for me in the editing. Like,
Yeah.
it's a necessary part of the work is really only half done for me. Like, if I just record myself talking about a movie, I've experienced the movie, I've documented my thoughts, but I still don't know what I think about the movie. I don't know what I think about it yet until I've gotten it into an editor, done all the all the work on it, basically until I've watched it many times and refined it through that slow thing. Totally.
Right,
I want
so yeah.
to run an experiment on you, but
Hmm.
instead of doing that, I'm going to ruin the possibility of the experiment by just telling you something about this, which is that I went in initially with a very strong, very explicit. I was like, I want this to be kind of like a YouTube aesthetic, so I'm going to do lots of quick cuts and make like fast, like that, like YouTube style where there's never any gaps in the speaking. You know, it's just bam ideas. And if you watch the early Sync Century stuff, like the Prince of Darkness stuff, it's very cut that way. And over time, I started to notice that I was becoming increasingly neurotic about it. It began with a desire for aesthetic perfection with it, predictably. I was like, I never want to hear a pop, and I never want to see a jarring motion, and so I got really particular about where I was cutting out dead air and all that. But then it started to become a thing where I realized that I was very insecure about the dead air. You know, I was like,
Yes.
it's like people won't stick around if I'm constantly going and hanging and all of this, you know.
Right.
And at some point I became aware of that, though. I was like, oh gosh, yeah, I'm really just a little hung up still about letting myself be natural on camera. So I'm doing this very rigorous cut thing. So then I went through a period where I was like, I have to really work against that. So I'm gonna not edit these at all. So there's a few videos up on the YouTube where they're really untouched, you
Yeah.
know. Almost nobody watched those videos. And also, like, the few people that did, like, that was in the zone of time when I got like a very worried call from an old friend and all this, you know, like,
Right.
it feels too disorganized. So then
Yeah.
I started editing again, but now I'm trying to edit in a different way. Especially it's been useful for me to edit other people talking, because I wouldn't think of butchering someone else's speech in the way that I did my own for so long, you know. I'd let some of those pauses sit. They're nice, you know. It doesn't make you think someone is dumb. It's just the way people talk.
Yeah.
And and so it's tricky now. I'm like walking a weird line with it. Like, there are basically my rule now is when I'm conveying exposition, I cut out dead air like crazy. You know, if I'm just trying to walk you through a concept kind of neutrally,
Yes.
I'll try to make that very efficient. But if it's an area where I'm expressing something with some emotion or some subtlety, increasingly I'll leave those sections pretty unedited, because the pauses and things just add dramatic emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I've only become comfortable doing that as I've become more comfortable with my identity overall. You know, it's a
Yes.
measure. It's almost like a
Yeah.
barometer. You know, how I'm presenting myself in my video content is very related, it seems, to how I feel about myself
That's so
generally.
funny. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It feels like you said, like the editing process.
The experiment was,
Yeah.
sorry,
Oh, sorry.
I was curious to, you know, if you would go through a similar trajectory with it. Now I've told you about a potential trajectory, so we can't know if you would or wouldn't have gone on it otherwise. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, sorry. What was the experiment?
Oh, I was just curious. I was thinking about not telling you and then watching your video to see if you went through a similar dynamic with it. Like, maybe you'd edit
Oh,
more and
right.
more and then edit less or something. But now that I've told you what happened to me with it, it's ruined the neutrality of that.
Oh, well,
This is a stupid
I've
point. I didn't mean to derail you.
no, I mean, I do think that the I'm noticing something similar, that the first like 5 minutes I've edited, I've been cutting out like ridiculously small
Yeah.
gaps between words, like stuff that I should
Yes,
probably be able to leave.
I do that too. It's good though. Like this, I'm going to be doing some work for someone that they want that. You know, it's definitely an aesthetic. Like, it's like YouTube efficiency talk aesthetic or something.
Yeah, exactly. And
It's good to learn it, you know.
and I agree with you that I think for a long time I was just sort of annoyed by those kind of YouTube videos. Exactly, there was something kind of fake about it all, and and I suppose what's surprising me now is just how it's almost as if Sync has put me into a position where I am sort of in need of doing this, or sort of more, you know. So it's funny how Sync has kind of driven me down into that in some way. I kind of like that.
Same. It's interesting. Well, it all seems so topical, just kind of looking at yourself in this video mirror and listening to your ideas and watching your own, you know. It's a very high fidelity mirror that we haven't had as human beings before, you know. It doesn't just reflect your current state. It will record your states. I just think we haven't learned yet what we can learn looking into that kind of mirror. People are just starting to do that with the democratization of video and all this. In the future, I think, you know, a YouTube channel is going to be just like keeping a diary. Almost everyone will have done it at some point. and will
Mhm.
have absorbed a little lesson in self-reflection from it, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, like you say, it is funny how watching a video of yourself is one thing, it's one kind of mirror, and editing a video of yourself,
Yes.
you suddenly see the kind of choices you make, what parts I decide to not show of
Oh
myself.
yeah, that's the best tool. Like the worst and best thing is noticing what you're afraid to leave in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think that one thing that was kind of intriguing me about watching the video essays recently is that it also made me realize how uh, there are so many things that could be done with a sync video that I would love to do. Like, for example, make it more theatrical.
yes. Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
like have a sort of a storyline, like a sync video that has like a
I know,
plot,
dude.
and it's
I
kind of
think about
like
this.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, like almost like AVGN style skits or something.
Yes,
You know.
yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
I think of like cool sync characters, or like we could all just be characters as ourselves. Or
Right.
I still think there's at least the possibility
Mm.
for a video style podcast if we could get enough of us in a room together sometime, you know?
Yeah.
It sucks I mean it's cool, but it also sucks that we're also globally distributed, because I think like a talk format, like a talk show with multiple synchead hosts would be
Yeah.
just the craziest thing. Like, I mean, I know that like 42 minutes is already that, but so let's just put video on that though. Put it in a studio with marble pillars and
Yes.
I don't know what else kind of weird things we could put. A scale model of the World Trade Center.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, exactly. It just
I'm just
like
sharing your
yeah.
enthusiasm. I think for
Yeah,
for production value and like I don't know, like yeah, that kind of thing.
because I was watching videos recently by ContraPoints. I don't know if
Oh
you've
yeah,
ever
yeah. I know them, sure.
and like holy shit, the whole I love the idea of playing different characters
Yes,
and
so good.
like the sort of weird meta narratives and inside jokes and I was just thinking wow, a ContraPoint style video but about sync,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
insane. I mean, I would love something like that. And
Maybe you're gonna make that.
well, I
You
was
should just
because
make it.
I keep thinking I have this sort of script ideas for a Banjo Kazooie analysis.
Oh,
Uh,
cool. Yeah.
and
I love just the name of that game, by the way. It's so funny
yes,
to me. Banjo Kazooie. It's just so funny.
I know. And it's funny because I've always just had scripts lying around for these kind of analysis and I never feel like making them or whatever and they're always just normal scripts just for like just me voiceover and footage of the game or whatever. But I keep having this fantasy of like imagine if exactly there was some sort of strange plot like I asked my friends to act as like characters who discover secrets in Banjo-Kazooie and then um kind of or even have me on a green screen kind of walking inside of the game environment
Oh
explaining things.
man, yeah, you're hitting like
So,
I wanted that so bad. I was trying to go in that direction with the bubble stuff early on. You remember?
right, exactly. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm in this little ship, and it's gonna like zoom around in the movie. It's like, of course, in my head it was 3D and like actually like
Yeah.
going into the scenes and all this, you know? Oh well.
Yeah. It it kind of it reminds me of what Alan Green says in his video about how I didn't know this thing about how Loose Change was originally a fiction movie
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Crazy.
where a bunch of friends discover something about 9/11 and then it's funny because then he says that when he started noticing that he was paying more attention to that than he had originally planned, suddenly the movie turned into a documentary, right?
Right.
And I was thinking, that's cool, but I would have loved if it had continued to be
Yes.
a plot-driven movie with characters, but with actual, like, real research into
Oh,
sync
dude.
shit.
I
I,
know. Oh,
I don't know.
yeah.
I think a good place to start is like, I don't know, I want like a better microphone, better
We
camera. I'm
must be
just,
at the
yeah.
peak level right now. Sorry,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really think we must be at the peak
Hmm.
level where you have a subculture that's just in its mode, you know? I just
Right.
feel like we're making just the dopest shit right now,
Mm.
but no one's really, it's, you know, it just
Hmm.
hasn't had its like blog post that gives it the right
Oh,
name and blows it up and makes, you know, but but
yeah.
it's just, I can feel the pressure almost like tangibly like built up in this community now. You know, we have original ideas, perspective, culture, like
Mm.
everything. We're doing really unique stuff.
Hmm.
um it's just it's, man, it's a little painful. It's like ready to pop now, you know. I want it to,
Yeah.
it's bothering me now. It's always bothered all of us, I guess, but
Mhm.
because it seems so profound and it seems like it's imminent once you get a taste of it.
Yeah.
But I just mean purely on the level of like collective of like-minded people making a different kind of art, you know.
Mm.
um i
Yeah.
think I think we must be overdue for a little bit of attention. I don't know, maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but it's like you say, like I just see so many signs of like things in the culture, like mainstream culture, that are so close to sync. They're just threatening to just walk right up to it in some cases, like some of these new TV shows, you know. So weird. But
Yeah. I keep thinking I'm always saddened when fan communities of the movies or the video games that we're talking about have zero interest in it.
yeah, it's so, I just recently got
Mm.
frowned upon for comparing a red mask worn by Grimes in her new music video to the red surgical mask that Michael Jackson wore like all the time. That's apparently a not good, like a bad observation.
Yeah. I know it sucks
It's
because
not that people
yeah.
disagree with the observation, you know.
Mm.
Rarely are they like, this isn't, I can't describe it, but you know what it is. It's just the fact that you found a valid comparison there is very threatening. The more valid it is, the more threatening it is.
Yeah.
The better it
Yeah.
is. The better the sync is, the more people have weird, like, that's the weird thing about it.
That yeah, and that's sort of because there are so many like in the case of video games, for example, there are so many like Donkey Kong communities that are super into uh, fan theories and studying the lore and finding like connections between the
Right,
games
right, yes.
and so I always feel like wow, that in a sense it's I wonder if they would be interested, but it's
No.
weird. It's not like you say. It's like it's not even a disagreement. It's just like a complete
No, yeah,
silence.
you're coloring outside of the lines in some way. They're
Mhm.
super into theories and all of this as long as they're, first of all, clearly marked as theories. If
Yeah.
you start implying that there might be some deeper reality to your theory, people really don't want to hear that. Um,
Mm.
but it's not just that, is it? It's also the whole texture of the theory seems like we tend to gravitate towards elements in these media properties
Mm.
that are just not seen or cared about, and there's just a barrier, you know, to, you see, I feel like if I made a blog that was like objects of Bob Zemeckis, and it
Yeah.
was just a bunch of pictures of cropped background elements of weird things from Bob Zemeckis movies.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no explanation, just an aesthetic. This is what this is. This is what I do. I notice peculiar things in Bob's movies and I put them here. I feel like people would have no problem relating to that as a cool, quirky internet art curation project,
Yeah.
But if I were to put a paragraph at the top of that page that said, that actually explained what's motivating me actually to go through and do that, it would become very problematic instantly for very many people.
Yeah.
So that's a funny aspect of it. It's not so much about the material, it seems. It's more about about the significance or lack thereof of that material.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, that's funny because that's one of the things I find fascinating about the recent Jake Kotzer format, in which there in his recent videos there are like zero voiceover and zero text,
yes,
and even zero text. So when you look at them like Time God, it's like a compilation.
You picked the best one. I love that
of scene. Yeah, and because I always wonder that video. I know that at some point in the video there's footage of the Twin Towers and stuff like that. So that would probably kind of clue people in. But
well, I watched that one when I was really new and didn't really understand anything. And it worked for me just as a kind of like, wow, like I see kind of like how this guy's mind is dancing across these different connections, It was really, I was like, wow, whoever made this is a really creative person. Like, I was just blown away by it, just as a piece. So it definitely worked on me anyway, just as a cool thing. Like, I didn't really understand 9/11 sync at that point. I mean, a little bit, but yeah, what a cool video.
And I'm always wondering, because I know we've spoken about this before, but this sort of situation always makes me wonder, how much do I want to push? For example, if I note, I think you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, I was just about to say, I just have gone strongly the opposite direction recently. I made this like profile on an art website for my art, and I could have let it all exist there with no explanation, but I wrote like a lengthy artist statement, like explicitly mentioning the Red Twins constellation and explaining the whole thing, like I perceive these patterns, I think they're related, like all this stuff. Like it was important to me to attach it to it finally, and just let it sit there as a kind of like, that's actually the nature of the work. Like, it's cool to me if you want to ignore all that and just enjoy it as a picture or whatever. I really have no problem, but I'm not going to censor my my own relatedness to my own art anymore. It's just part of it, and it's out there, and I sort of have a like, take it or leave it kind of attitude about it, knowing though that a lot of it is going to be leave it. A lot of people are just going to be, a lot of people who otherwise might have been interested in my work might be turned off now. On the other hand, there are probably many people who wouldn't have been interested in my work who might be turned on to it now. So I don't know. It's just all related to this being yourself in public thing, though. It's very nerve-wracking.
No, exactly. I think that I'm also feeling the desire to be more open about my intentions, because very often, sometimes I've like shared some of these sync videos on Reddit or whatever, and I always kind of phrase it as if, this is a joke or whatever. I don't take this seriously.
Right.
And I think that I'm probably just making everyone a disservice by doing that, because
maybe I think it's complicated.
I don't know.
You're probably also trying to be generous with people and give them an in, so that it's not some crazy person like flailing at them immediately. I'm never sure what my motivations are really in terms of how I present my stuff. I think it's just always I have like a million parallel reasons. Like the base reason is just, please love me, don't reject me, I'm lonely. Like underneath, like Underneath all the art, it's really just like a shiny thing I can show you to make you like me or something. So there's always that aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't think it's reducible to that stuff either. So I don't know. I'm sure your motivations are a mixture of good and bad. And I'm sure the effects are a mixture of good and bad as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the strange thing about it, is that thinking about it, it is true that to a certain extent, I do find a lot of my sync videos to be funny and humorous. So it's such a strange thing, because sometimes if I say, oh, you know, these 20 videos about Tommy Wiseau's The Room are comedy videos, it's not entirely true, but I do find it fun.
Comedy videos.
Like, they're not comedy videos, but it's like
I'm just picturing them titled that, like in a list or something. My comedy videos. And then it's just like amazing, like insane analysis of The Room. Anyway.
Oh, that would be an amazing name for a playlist of like super hardcore sync videos.
Yes, yeah. Comedy videos.
Yeah, because like
the best joke. It makes them into comedy videos. Like just the act of putting them on a list, titling them, that is so funny. Sorry, that's so funny.
Because you get
comedy videos.
You get the cosmic giggle or something.
Like, yes, something about that's so perfect. It's better than any other. It's not funny to call them romance films or horror films or something, but comedy video, that is just hysterical.
It's strange, because there are like that's the weird thing about it, is that it inspires a big serious religious feeling in me, but at the same time there are some of those videos where like I'm analyzing.
Oh, it's so funny.
Like Tommy Wiseau's like whatever his. Like I'm spending 10 minutes looking at a bad sex scene or something.
Yeah.
And in a weird postmodern way, it's really funny.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. I hope you don't mind. We can edit this out if it's like too much on the spot or something. But you said you deleted your Eyes Wide Shut stuff. Was that because of the sexual content in that film, do you think? Or was there some other reason that motivated you to axe it?
No, it's a shame. I would be very happy to still have those videos. It's just that I went through several phases at the beginning of my YouTube channel of suddenly having like a panicky reaction of oh shit, what the fuck am I doing with all of this stuff publicly available? You know, I suddenly having this sort of reaction of, okay, I just need to delete all this. And it's a shame, because I would like to see some of that. I would like to see, you know, what my tone of voice was back then or whatever.
You didn't keep local copies of any of it either.
No, I was super like.
Wow, yeah.
I was super like.
You were really motivated to
panicky.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a shame, because I remember really enjoying analyzing that film. It was one of the first like.
Oh, cool.
Sync videos I made, I think.
Maybe someone archived it. Some obsessive fan has it.
Well, it's funny. I do know of. There was this guy who I chatted with for a while, the early years of my channel. Who I remember he's telling me that he had saved copies of some of his favorite videos of mine, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, someone mentioned something similar to me. It's a little weird to think about.
It is like I am a bit sort of like weirded out, but at the same time, I'm like, you know, well, at the same time, I don't.
At the same time, I have fantasies where I imagine like chiseling my discoveries into stone and like burying them in the center of the earth or something, so that in a million years, when the aliens finally land, they'll be like, there were some people who understood the nature of the funny joke message we sent them, you know. I don't know how those things can coexist. Like, on the one hand, I take it so seriously. I'm like, yes, this needs to be archived for all time. On the other hand, anytime someone indicates to me that they themselves are actually taking my work that seriously, I feel very weird, not in a good way, really, about it. So
yeah, exactly. When other people are archiving it, yeah,
that's right. That's my job, to be insane about it and and make the time capsule. Other people shouldn't do that. That's way too much energy in my direction. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, and it's something about fame, I suppose. And...
Yeah, it is. And just about the illusion of control over our image, you know?
Fame. But
we put our images into the fame machine, or the potential fame machine that is the YouTube arena, you know?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It's all over now.
That's the thing, like what you were saying about that everyone could be a YouTuber, because, you know, even when at the point, like when I only had like 10 subscribers or whatever, that was already like, holy shit, there's 10 people watching my videos.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have less than 100 on my sync channel still.
Right, yeah.
I'm still in the mode of like every new subscriber, I'm like, I feel like it's a connection, you know? Maybe it is or isn't, but I feel very strongly about it still. It's funny.
Yeah, man.
I don't know how you make the transition. You start having like hundreds of thousands of subs or something. You can't relate to it as you can only start relating to it as a big quantity. It's not people anymore. The moment it's less than 100, it's still people. I can imagine all those people almost. I can imagine a room full of 100 people. But that's
exactly
the limit, really. Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking also, like, the thing about pushing the message of sync.
God, it all sounds so uncool. How do I convince people that it's actually cool? Like, anyway, yeah.
It's like knocking on people's doors.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's hilarious, by the way. Maybe we should just do that. Can you imagine, like bizarre, like countercultural types, like show up at your door with pamphlets, like, did you know Back to the Future predicts 9/11? It's like a nice glossy pamphlet with like with like numbers like circled on clocks and things.
Yes, look, if you look at
like, hey, can I show you some pictures? You like open this briefcase and like this like easel falls out of it. It's like 100 glossy posterized screenshots of like gremlins.
Oh, that's a really nice. I love the idea of printing out screenshots for like sync presentation purposes in real life.
It's so funny. It's so funny. You could have one of those telescoping pointer things, you know?
Oh, yes. Well, that's another thing. We were talking about formats. I would love to just film myself.
You'd need like 10 people with 10 pointers, like all moving in synchrony to like illustrate the dimensional like properties of the of the images.
That'd be so funny if like filming that for a video, like create like a fake presentation.
I love this. Yeah. It could be just like the Mormons showing up, you know? So funny.
Well, I was actually, because I was thinking of a moment when the two worlds collided with this, which is when Twin Peaks season 3 came out.
Yeah. I missed that whole thing because I just did.
Right.
But, yeah.
Well, no, it's just like what I was really intrigued about is how suddenly the subreddit, the Twin Peaks subreddit, became filled with, you know, every new episode that came out was just filled with people basically noticing syncs.
Yes. Yeah.
Noticing, and of course, because it was a safe context, because the whole show allows you to do that. It's built around,
almost requests it. Yeah.
Exactly, almost requests it. So it was so funny how when Alex Fulton from the Kitchen Sink posted like a sync up of like he was playing 2 of the episodes at the same time and saying, hey, look at how these episodes sync up. And it created this explosion because suddenly everyone's open to that kind of stuff, but that video kind of it crossed the limit or something.
Line. Yeah.
And it was funny to see because it was the kind of reaction that you would never get on any subreddit.
It must hinge on the authorship issue, right? As long as we can imagine that we're chasing after patterns that may have been authored by the local normal author, David Lynch and so on.
Exactly.
People are comfortable. But if you show something like that, it's like, here's these two things that clearly, maybe not clearly, but it's very unlikely that they were designed to be perceived that way.
Mm.
That seems to be, a lot of people stop there. They're incapable of, and you know, I don't know exactly why. I guess it must have to do with fear of the unconscious. That's what stopped me, you know. I just knew, that's a very, something's the matter, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Either I'm not thinking about it correctly, or it's very bad, or I don't know. I just don't know, but I just don't want to know anything more about that. And you can watch people go into the weirdest rational knots with this stuff. I posted Alan's video, the 9/11 Spider-Verse video, to a Facebook group called Time Anomaly Research Society. This is a Facebook group that I've been a member of for a while because I thought, oh, that's cool, you know. I didn't really follow it very closely. I had to look at the rules before I posted. In my estimation, posting this video met all those rules. But wow, people just hated it and argued with me about it, and then eventually they deleted it. It was like, I just couldn't believe it because there's nothing the matter with it, you know. It's just a video showing correspondences between visual media and other kinds of media and this event. Before the event, it's exactly the thing that group should have been. They should have eaten it up, you know.
It wasn't even
but actually they were kind of afraid of it, very confused by it, and didn't want it to be anywhere near their Facebook group, you know.
And it's a time anomaly group. That's the funny thing.
Yeah,
that it's
time anomaly. This person was. I had someone arguing with me. They were like, this isn't a time anomaly, you know. And I'm like, the fuck is a time anomaly? You know, what are you even what are you talking about? I just don't understand people, I guess. But it was definitely like I really got. I think at that point, it's an emotional issue. It does no good at that point to double down on. It's funny because they're accusing you of not being logical.
Yeah.
So my response is often, okay, well, let me make this perfectly logical for you. Here's why you have to admit that these pictures are of 9/11, you know. But that doesn't work because it's not. Anyway, it doesn't work, but it's actually not a logical issue. There's no logical problem. The whole problem of it is that it forces it. Synchronicity is, at least partially, a Trojan horse that delivers the irrational into your tightly controlled kingdom.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Even people who claim, especially people who claim to be interested in things like time anomalies, they're interested in it and interested in it in an external, visible way because it's partly in their shadow still. They're attracted to it. They would like very much to experience something like a time anomaly, but only under terms that will allow them to integrate it, which means they can't experience a real time anomaly yet. They can only experience something that meets their expectation of what that's going to be, which is going to be something very safe, which is fine. It's just where they're at, you know. I don't mean even it's a criticism, but it just is very frustrating though, trying to figure out where we can show our work. It's like no one wants to see it. It really is trash work at the moment. There's a strong emotional desire to put it in a place that you can't see with all the other smelly stuff, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. However, there's been a rich history in art of things like that turning back around. So I think the fact that it's so repressed and thrown in the trash bodes very well for it, probably in the long run.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's funny with the Twin Peaks thing. It was really interesting because it even elicited a response from the producer of the show.
Oh, I remember something about that. Can you? Yeah.
I guess because someone, I can't remember how it went. I don't know if someone probably sent it to her, asking whether this was intentional, and she tweeted about it, said, I want to assure everyone that this wasn't intentional, or something like that.
Oh wow! So she went out of her way to.
Right, exactly.
say that that it wasn't intentional. It's interesting. Yeah.
Right, because I think that also, like, exactly, I think that a lot of other kinds of things, they, a producer wouldn't waste time with that.
No.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe, she just has an active Twitter account, but it was so interesting. And it's the thing that worries
I've
me,
seen that actually somewhat routinely, I think. I've seen many artists and creators like come out specifically to shut down an interpretation. I always kind of frown a little bit to myself and lose a little bit of respect for those artists when they do that. But yeah, I see it quite a lot.
I suppose this sort of is what worries me always, of like, I don't know how to navigate the tightrope between being respectful and being condescending in the sense that, like,
yes,
because a part of me wants to say, oh, maybe I shouldn't be sharing this stuff because maybe it will really disturb someone. But there's something kind of condescending and arrogant about that as well.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Some people like to be disturbed. You know what I mean? Right. I like it when art disturbs me, and
yes.
I get very annoyed when people try to censor my enjoyment of disturbing art, kind of for my supposedly with my best interest or something.
Yeah, that's a good
So it's a good point. I have the same impulse going the other way. I mean, I also tend to self-censor and so on, but when I think about how I prefer to interact with people, it casts light on it for me. I'm like, yeah, I don't really like to hang out with people that are censoring themselves because they think it's like they have an implicitly bad impression of me, that they think I'm not going to be able to handle some big secret they have or something, which isn't true, like, probably. But the thing is that it, unfortunately, it is rather true in some situations. Like, we've all had the experience of not doing that, of being very open and having it go badly, So I don't know. It's just the people getting along with people and with ourselves. I don't know. Sorry, I don't have any advice for this, obviously. Confused about this, I guess.
Well, and I'm afraid I think I would have to start to leave.
Yes.
Because
I love this way of ending this. We just kind of moved. What did we do structurally here? We had a big circle, a big editing circle. That was nice. Yeah. And then I think after we closed that circle, something strange started to happen, and now I don't know what's going on. We've just kind of we've gotten like more and more ambiguous territory. I guess it makes sense, having made a perfect circle, to then make something with no shape. So it's funny. Those were our two shapes for today: a perfect circle and a big blob of scrawled psycho scribble.
Yeah, it's like a big circle and a line, so it's like a nine. I was also thinking there was a moment when we reached the perfect circle that I was thinking, wow, we were talking about editing, and this would be a perfect place to cut the episode, because it's like such a nice circle.
That's true. We could cut into a perfect circle, the band, and therefore have two Maynard James Keenan references in this episode.
Oh.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll let you go. I don't want you. What do you? Yes. What are you heading to?
Oh, well,
we can cut the episode here or whatever. Bye, everybody.
Bye.